Have you ever wondered who really owns New York? I'm not talking about the mayor, nor the bankers on Wall Street, but the men who made the banks tremble. Imagine a massive corporation with an internal system stricter than Apple or Amazon, possessing its own private army and a judicial code that knows no appeal, where the punishment is a single bullet between the eyes. In 1931, while the world was drowning in the Great Depression, there was one man who saw a golden opportunity in the chaos. He wasn't just a thug, he was a cold-blooded genius. His name was Charlie Luciano. This man didn't kill his rivals to become a king. He killed the very idea of a king to establish the Commission. Today, we will reveal the secrets buried at the bottom of the Hudson River. We will explain how gangs transformed from mere highwaymen into an empire run like a Fortune 500 company.
Before we begin digging up these graves and learning how this empire fell due to betrayals no one expected, if you are a fan of true stories that surpass fiction and the mystery surrounding the history of organized crime, hit the subscribe button now and turn on the notification bell. On this channel, we don't just narrate history, we make you live it. Join our family now, because what you hear today might make you look at New York City completely differently forever.
To understand La Cosa Nostra, we must first understand the mindset of New York in that era. The city was boiling with Italian, Irish, and Jewish immigrants. Everyone was looking for a living, but the laws were stacked against outsiders. In this crowd, Charlie Luciano emerged. Luciano hated the title Don or Godfather in the old sense. He saw the old Sicilian bosses, whom we call the mustache Petes, those with large mustaches, as obstacles to progress. They refused to work with non-Italians and sanctified loyalty to their Sicilian villages more than they sanctified the dollar. To Luciano, this was commercial stupidity. He used to say, "Why fight over one territory when we can share the whole city and grow together?" Luciano possessed a corporate vision. He watched how oil and railroad companies were managed and wondered, why shouldn't crime be the same? Instead of the leader going out himself to kill, there should be a functional structure. There is the boss, CEO, the consigliere, legal counsel, the capos, middle management, and finally the soldiers, the workforce. The secret that many didn't see was that Luciano was a globalist ahead of his time. He began building alliances with Meyer Lansky and Benjamin Siegel, the Jewish mob. To the old guard, this was heresy against Sicilian traditions, but to Luciano, Lansky was the financial mind he needed to turn dirty money into legitimate figures in the banks. In this foundational paragraph, we realize that La Cosa Nostra did not start with a desire to kill, but with a desire for order. Luciano realized that constant wars in the streets hurt business. The police intervene, the press screams, and the money flees. Thus, the solution was the Commission. The idea was to create a board of directors comprising the heads of the 5 major families in New York, whose details we will learn later, where major decisions would be voted upon. If a soldier from the Gambino family wanted to kill someone in a Genovese territory, he couldn't do it as a personal decision. He had to bring the matter to the Commission. This system turned crime from bloody chaos into a stable industry. Money began to flow from gambling, extortion, labor unions, and even the loaves of bread and the cement used to build skyscrapers. The Mafia took a cut of everything that moved in New York. Luciano had just created the largest illegal monopoly in human history. But behind these elegant suits and expensive cigars, there were terrifying secrets. The price was the soul. Once you became a made man or a man of respect in the family, you no longer belonged to yourself, your wife, or your children. You belonged to the organization. And the terrifying secret Luciano whispered to his men was, "We enter here alive, and we only leave in boxes." This was the birth of an empire that did not fear the law, because it simply manufactured its own law in the dark streets of New York. In the next paragraph, we will dive into the details of the war that led to this system and how Luciano betrayed his former bosses in a single night that covered the sidewalks of Manhattan in blood.
La Cosa Nostra was not a cohesive organization from the start. Rather, it consisted of scattered groups united by ethnicity and separated by greed. In 1930, the Castellamarese War broke out, the conflict that changed the face of organized crime forever. There were two warring poles: Joe Masseria, nicknamed Joe the Boss, a man who represented the old Sicilian mentality, hated foreigners, and saw himself as the king of New York. On the other side was Salvatore Maranzano, the man sent from Sicily by Don Vito Cascioferro to impose order and subdue Masseria.
This war was a clash between two dinosaurs, but in their shadow moved a generation of young wolves who were tired of the ancient rules. Luciano, who worked under Masseria, watched the blood being spilled in the streets and felt disgusted, not out of morality, but because war is expensive. Every soldier killed is a loss in profit, and every bullet fired brings 10 policemen. Maranzano possessed an army coming from the town of Castellammare del Golfo in Sicily, hence the name of the war. It was a battle of identity. Would the Mafia remain merely an arm of Sicilian villages in America, or would it become an independent American entity?
The terrifying secret of this war was not in the death toll, but in the double game Luciano was playing. He was meeting secretly with Maranzano, promising to betray his boss, Masseria, in exchange for ending the war. Luciano realized that Masseria was a lucky man who had survived numerous assassination attempts, to the point that the press called him the man who could dodge bullets. But Luciano knew that luck is no shield against betrayal from within.
On April 15, 1931, at the Nuova Villa Tamarero restaurant on Coney Island, Luciano sat with his boss, Masseria, for a lavish lunch. The table was filled with pasta and wine, and laughter rang out. After lunch, Luciano suggested playing cards. At a calculated moment, Luciano excused himself to go to the restroom. As soon as the bathroom door closed, 4 men stormed the restaurant, including Bugsy Siegel and Vito Genovese. They emptied their butts into Masseria's back and head. Joe the Boss died holding the ace of spades in his hand. Luciano walked out of the bathroom, coldly washed his hands, looked at his boss's corpse, and said in a businesslike tone, "The war is over."
But what Maranzano, the new victor, did not know was that Luciano had not uprooted Masseria just to put another master in his place. Luciano had already begun drawing a new map for New York, a map where there was no room for a sole king. After Masseria's murder, Maranzano appointed himself Capo di tutti capi, boss of all bosses. He held a massive banquet attended by 500 gangsters, sat on a throne, and spoke in Latin, imitating Julius Caesar. He divided New York into 5 families and placed a leader at the head of each. But he committed a fatal flaw. He demanded absolute loyalty and financial tribute from everyone. Luciano, the strategic genius, realized that Maranzano was just a more educated version of Masseria. Maranzano was already planning to get rid of Luciano and Vito Genovese because he feared their ambition. Maranzano hired a hitman named Mad Dog Call to assassinate Luciano. But in the world of the Mafia, he who owns the information owns life. Meyer Lansky, the Jewish mastermind and Luciano's ally.
On September 10, 1931, the massacre known as the Night of the Sicilian Vespers took place. It wasn't just a killing, it was a surgical removal of the old guard. Luciano did not use his Italian men, fearing they would be recognized or hesitate to kill the boss of bosses. Instead, he enlisted Lansky's Jewish gunmen, who dressed as federal tax agents and stormed Maranzano's office in a Manhattan skyscraper. The killers entered, claiming they were on an inspection mission, and once they entered the office room, they pounced on Maranzano with knives and then bullets to ensure his death. At that same hour, in different cities across the United States, Luciano's men were carrying out simultaneous liquidations of more than 40 loyalists to the old Sicilian mentality. It was a day for cleaning the house.
With Maranzano's death, the era of the boss of all bosses ended forever. Luciano gathered the leaders of the 5 families: the Genovese family, led by Luciano himself; the Mangano family, which would later become the Gambino family, the Galliano family, which would later become the Lucchese family, the Profaci family, which would later become the Colombo family, and the Bonanno family. Luciano told them at a historic meeting, "From today, there is no king. We are partners. New York is big enough for everyone, and whoever causes trouble will face the commission." Here, the commission was born. The mafia was no longer just a gang, it became an institution. They officially established the laws of omertà, silence, and joining the family required a baptism by blood and an oath taken by burning the image of a saint in the new member's hand to symbolize that he would burn in hell if he betrayed the family.
The terrifying secret that Luciano hid was that he didn't believe in all those religious rituals, but he knew that fear and rituals are what keep the soldiers under control, while numbers and money are what move the big heads. Thus, New York transformed from a battlefield into a closed joint stock company, and the blood spilled on the night of the Vespers was the ink with which the founding contract of the empire was written.
In 1931, the mafia was not just a gang, it became a state within the state. Luciano, who survived a brutal assassination attempt that left a mark on his eye, was not planning to just control the streets. He wanted to control the entire American shadow economy. Luciano founded the Commission to serve as both the Supreme Court and the Board of Directors. The secret you don't know is that commission meetings were held in places no one expected, sometimes in luxury hotel suites, and sometimes in the back rooms of simple pasta restaurants in Little Italy.
The goal of the commission was to impose Pax Mafiosa, mafia peace. The new law was strict. A family boss shall not be killed without the approval of the commission, and whoever violates this law shall be sentenced to death immediately. This decision was not driven by love, it was pure business. Wars attract the FBI, and the FBI closes ports, and closing ports means stopping the flow of liquor, tobacco, and weapons. Therefore, the mafia transformed from an invading army into a criminal judicial system. Imagine the scene. 5 men sitting around a round table, each representing an empire in his own right. The Genovese family owned the ports and gambling. The Gambino family controlled the construction workers' unions. The Lucchese family dominated the garment industry in the garment district. The Bonanno family ran extensive operations in drugs and smuggling across Canada. As for the Colombo family, their specialty was extortion and protecting small interests. In these meetings, issues no different from those of major corporations were discussed. Division of market shares, expansion of influence in other cities like Chicago and Las Vegas, and settling border disputes between soldiers. Luciano sat as the chairman of the board, but he was smart enough to make every leader feel like a king in his own realm. The biggest secret circulating in those rooms was the power of external alliances. Luciano, with Meyer Lansky's help, began investing mafia money in legal real estate and hotels. They began buying politicians, judges, and even mayors. The law didn't pursue them because they simply bought the law. Silence was the official currency, and betrayal meant disappearing from existence without leaving a trace, not just physically, but even from official records.
Without organization, the mafia would have collapsed in its first decade. What Luciano did was copy the organizational structure of the ancient Roman army and merge it with the structure of modern corporations. At the top of the pyramid is the boss, the person no soldier can speak to directly. There is always a buffer protecting him from legal prosecution. Below the boss is the underboss, the field commander who manages daily operations. But the most mysterious position was the consigliere, or advisor. This person is not necessarily a killer, rather he is a shrewd lawyer, a smart accountant, or a wise man who whispers in the boss's ear to prevent him from committing follies that could destroy the family.
The terrifying secret in the structure of La Cosa Nostra was the capo system, or group leaders. Each capo manages a crew of 10 to 20 soldiers. The genius here lies in plausible deniability. If a soldier is caught committing a crime, he knows nothing about the boss. He only knows his specific capo.
And if the capo falls, he possesses no evidence to convict the boss. To become a made man, or a man of respect, you had to pass brutal tests. First, you must be of pure Italian descent, at least on your father's side. Second, you must have carried out a contract or performed a killing for the family to prove your loyalty by blood. The baptism ritual was terrifying. If you betray our secrets, your soul will burn in hell, as the image of this saint burns in your hand. This oath was not just words, it was a psychological contract that bound the individual to the organization more than his bond to his real family.
But the real engine of this machine was the associates. These are not official members, but thousands of people who work for the mafia. Truck drivers, nurses, construction workers, tax collectors, and even policemen. The mafia infiltrated labor unions. Do you want to build a skyscraper in New York? You must buy cement from a company owned by the mafia and hire workers from a union controlled by a capo. If you refuse, work will suddenly stop, or a fire might mysteriously break out at the construction site. The secret that Americans didn't realize for years was that the mafia was imposing an invisible tax on everything. A loaf of bread, a bottle of milk, a theater ticket. Part of the price of everything went into the pockets of the 5 families. They turned New York into a modern fiefdom, where the boss is the king, the soldiers are the knights, and the public is the peasantry that pays tribute without knowing it. This was the empire at the height of its power, silent, organized, and incredibly terrifying. If the commission was the board of directors, then Murder Inc. was the human waste disposal department. The secret that terrified America in the 1930s was that the mafia didn't kill out of anger or personal revenge. They turned killing into a professional industry. The killers didn't belong to a single family. They were a cross-family execution squad, consisting of Jewish and Italian killers from Brooklyn, working under the command of Albert Anastasia, the man nicknamed the Lord High Executioner, and Louis Lepke. Imagine the cruelty of this system. When the commission decided to liquidate someone, the contract was passed to Murder Inc. The killers didn't know the victim, and the victim didn't know them. This separation made it impossible for the police to link the killer to a motive. The killers received fixed weekly salaries in addition to bonuses for every successful operation. They had an arsenal of weapons, but they preferred the ice pick. Why? Because a stab in the ear goes directly to the brain and leaves little blood, making the death sometimes appear like a natural stroke if the body is not examined closely. The terrifying secret revealed by later analyses was that these killers lived completely normal lives. Abe Reles, one of their most famous killers, would go home to read stories to his children after having strangled someone with a wire an hour earlier. Murder Inc. was responsible for approximately 400 to 1,000 murders in 10 years. No one was safe, not even senior leaders. Their most famous victim was Dutch Schultz, the crime king of Harlem. Schultz committed the ultimate sin. He wanted to assassinate District Attorney Thomas Dewey. The commission saw that this would bring unbearable heat from the government. So, instead of protecting Schultz, Luciano issued an order to Murder Inc. to liquidate him. At the Palace Chop House restaurant, while Schultz was washing his hands, the killers stormed in and showered him with bullets. Schultz died deliriously, whispering mysterious words recorded by the police, ending the era of chaotic outlaws and beginning the era of the system that sacrifices its sons for the survival of the institution.
Murder Inc. was the tool that guaranteed everyone's silence. The fear of them ran through the veins of every soldier and associate because they knew the company never made mistakes and that death might come from a stranger smiling at you on a street corner, receiving his salary from the same treasury you fill with your sweat and crime. By the 1940s and 50s, La Cosa Nostra had reached the peak of its influence. But this influence gave birth to a new kind of conflict, the struggle between soft power and raw power. After Luciano was exiled to Italy, Frank Costello took over the leadership of the Luciano family, which would later become the Genovese family. Costello was nicknamed the Prime Minister of the Underworld. He hated violence and preferred bribery. He possessed a network of judges and politicians to the extent that he held parties attended by senior state officials. For Costello, the mafia had to become completely invisible.
But in the shadows, there was Vito Genovese. Genovese was the exact opposite. He was a psychopathic man who believed fear was the only way to rule. He saw Costello as weak because he refused to enter the drug trade, which the commission had officially banned for fear of harsh sentences. Here began the secret that led to the collapse of the empire: internal division. In 1957, Genovese decided to end the Costello era. He sent a young soldier, later to be called Vincent Gigante, to assassinate Costello. As Costello was entering the lobby of his home, the killer shouted, "This is for you, Frank," and fired. The bullet grazed Costello's head but didn't kill him. Instead of retaliating and starting a street war that would destroy the business, Costello got the message. He decided to retire quietly, a very rare occurrence in the mafia, leaving the throne to Genovese.
But Genovese, with his recklessness and greed, committed the mistake that history never forgave him for: the Appalachian Meeting. Genovese wanted to be officially inaugurated as the boss of bosses before mafia leaders from all over America. He invited more than 100 leaders to a rural estate in New York. The terrifying secret is that the mafia thought they were so far above the law that they became arrogant. But a local policeman suspected the presence of dozens of luxury cars in that remote area. The police raided the meeting, and mafia leaders fled into the woods in their suits that cost thousands of dollars. This scandal was the first nail in the empire's coffin. J. Edgar Hoover, the FBI director, who had denied the existence of the mafia for decades, it is said because they were blackmailing him with scandalous photos, could no longer deny it. Hoover was forced to declare an official war on organized crime.
The government began using wiretapping and recruiting informants. Loyalty began to erode in the face of the idea of life imprisonment. Genovese himself fell into a trap set for him by his rivals, with the blessing of Costello and Luciano from his exile, where he was framed in a drug case and died behind bars. The era of absolute secrecy began to end, and the era of the Great Betrayal appeared on the horizon. The enemy was no longer just the police. The enemy became the neighbor who sits with you at the table while hiding a recording device under his shirt. In 1963, the earthquake that Luciano never imagined in his worst nightmares occurred. For 3 decades, La Cosa Nostra was a ghost whose existence could not be proven. The police knew there were gangs, but they didn't realize there was a global system linking them. This silence was protected by the law of omertà. He who speaks dies, and he who betrays his comrades has his family killed up to the 4th degree. But Joe Valachi, a soldier in the Genovese family, decided to break this law and sing the greatest melody of betrayal in history.
The secret behind Valachi's confession wasn't heroism, but terror. While Valachi was in prison with his boss, Vito Genovese, Genovese mistakenly believed that Valachi was a police informant. In the prison corridor, Genovese gave Valachi the kiss of death, an ancient Sicilian ritual meaning you will soon be killed. This terror drove Valachi into the arms of the feds. For the first time, a mobster stood before national television cameras to say the words that changed everything. We don't call it the mafia, we call it La Cosa Nostra. This thing of ours, this is our world.
Valachi explained to the world and to the stunned security agencies the organizational structure set by Luciano. He drew maps of the 5 families, mentioned names, ranks, and the locations of safe houses. He revealed the secret of made men and how they were accepted. More importantly, he revealed the commission. He clarified that crime in America is not random, but is managed from a single boardroom.
Valachi's testimony was a stab to the heart of the mafia's Italian identity. The bosses felt betrayed, not just because their secrets were exposed, but because the myth had been broken. The mafia was no longer a mysterious, invincible entity. It became an organization that could be infiltrated. Although Valachi did not provide enough evidence to send the bosses to prison at that time, he provided the roadmap that the FBI would use for the next 3 decades. Valachi sowed the seeds of doubt, From that moment on, every boss looked at his soldiers and wondered, who among them will be the next Valachi? The era of blind trust ended, and the era of wiretapping and lethal suspicions began. If Valachi's testimony was the map, then the RICO law, Racketeer-Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act, was the atomic bomb. Before this law, it was impossible to prosecute a gang leader because he didn't execute the crimes with his own hands. He would settle for a nod or a coded word to his men. But the RICO law, drafted by Robert Blakey, completely changed the rules of the game. It allowed for the prosecution of the leader based on the actions of the organization as a whole. If it is proven that you run a criminal enterprise, you are responsible for every bullet fired by the youngest soldier in your gang. The secret to the fall of the empire in the 1980s was technology. The FBI planted wiretapping devices in places no one thought of. They planted a microphone in the Jaguar belonging to Tony Salerno, the actual boss of the Genovese family. And they planted another device in the boathouse where the family bosses used to meet. For months, federal agents recorded thousands of hours of conversations that included orders to kill, the distribution of extortion profits, and discussions of who would be the next member of the commission. In 1985, District Attorney Rudy Giuliani launched what was known as the Commission Trial. This was the greatest legal blow in the history of organized crime. The heads of the 5 families, or their representatives, sat in the dock together: Fat Tony Salerno, Anthony Corallo, Carmine Persico. The government had decided to destroy the board of directors all at once. The terrifying secret revealed by the trial was the extent of the mafia's penetration into the heart of New York. It turned out they controlled the concrete workers' union, meaning that every building built in Manhattan paid a tax to the mafia. They controlled bakeries, ports, and even waste disposal. The trial didn't just destroy the men, it destroyed the economic system of the mafia.
At the end of the trial, prison sentences of hundreds of years were handed down to the leaders. For the first time since 1931, New York was without an effective commission. The big heads who thought they were above the law found themselves spending the rest of their lives in cramped cells, eating prison food, and remembering the good old days of the Waldorf Astoria. That wasn't just the end of a trial, it was the end of the golden age of the mafia. They transformed from kings of the city to fugitives fearing the shadow, and the new generation of the mafia, like John Gotti, began to realize that the old rules no longer protected anyone in the age of radar and the FBI.
After the commission trials crushed the old guard, one man appeared who thought he could turn back the clock: John Gotti, nicknamed the Dapper Don. Gotti was the antithesis of everything Luciano believed in. Luciano sanctified silence, while Gotti sanctified fame. Gotti killed his boss, Paul Castellano, in a daring assassination in front of Sparks Steakhouse in broad daylight to take over the throne of the Gambino family. The secret Gotti didn't realize was that the era of celebrity bosses was over. His constant appearance in magazines and his smiles challenging the law made him a personal target for the FBI.
Gotti's empire fell when he committed the ultimate sin that Luciano had warned against: overconfidence. The second in command in his family, Sammy the Bull Gravano, the man who executed dozens of assassinations in cold blood, decided to sing to the FBI after hearing recordings of Gotti belittling him and planning to hold him responsible for the crimes. Gravano's testimony was the final bullet in the heart of the classic La Cosa Nostra structure. With Gotti's death in prison in 2002, alone and sick, the curtain fell on the era of the theatrical mafia.
But has the mafia really died? The terrifying secret that security agencies don't want you to know is that La Cosa Nostra hasn't vanished. It has evolved. The 5 families learned the hard lesson: bullets attract radar, and blood ruins business. Today, the mafia operates in the digital shadow. They have replaced the ice pick with hacking software, and replaced extortion in the streets with money laundering via cryptocurrencies and manipulating stock market shares. They no longer need to just infiltrate cement unions. They have infiltrated technology, medical,
and international real estate sectors. The 5 families still exist in New York, but their leaders today might be your neighbors in the upscale suburbs, living as boring businessmen while managing a shadow economy worth billions of dollars.
Luciano's legacy is still alive in one rule: crime is business, and business requires adaptation. The empire has transformed from a bloody organization into a ghostly entity crossing continents. The journey of La Cosa Nostra is the story of human ambition in its ugliest forms. A story that tells us that absolute power always leads to absolute betrayal, and that an empire built on corpses must eventually be buried beneath them. We made them think we were finished, and that is exactly where we want them to be.
We have reached the end of our journey into the depths of the world of organized crime. If you enjoyed this epic historical and narrative account, don't forget to leave your mark, subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and share your thoughts in the comments. Do you think the modern era of digital crime is more dangerous than the era of Luciano and Gotti? And do you think loyalty still has a place in today's world, or is greed the only driver? Thank you for watching, and wait for us in the next story, where truth is always stranger than fiction.